Hello and welcome to the Westcity Church podcast. If you'd like to get to know us more, find us at westcitychurch.com.au. We really hope that you're encouraged by today's message.
I'll stand up here so you can all see me. Hey everyone. I'm actually standing in for Josh today, who has been roped into doing the media. The thing is, when Mel asks you to do something, you kind of do it. Thanks, Mel. So listen, every week we hear some really wonderful community stories about coming to the table. Often they're quite personal. And when I was contemplating on what I might share with you today, I decided to go right back to basics. And I asked myself, Irene, what do you genuinely feel when you come to the table, when you receive communion? And listen, I had lots of different thoughts. I thought, do I feel joyed? Do I feel safe? Is it maybe out of a sense of duty from my Catholic roots? And if I'm honest, do I genuinely feel something every time I come? And I actually think it's probably a whole combination of things. And to answer that question for me that last question, for me personally, I feel like I do. I feel something. And regardless of what emotional state I'm in, I realize that the underlying theme for me coming to communion is actually about connection. And connection with God, connection in His presence, connection with the lovely music that Ash is properly fangirling over, connection to the bread and the wine that we share together, connection to the servers of our communion, and by default to the members of Westcity. And it's on this last point I decided to reflect on some of my individual connections that I've made here at Westcity. And I certainly don't mean to embarrass anybody, but some of these connections, or the reason for presenting these, is that they weren't expected. They weren't what I thought would happen. And Rob's not here today, but I want to talk about him first and foremost. When I first met Rob, I actually had quite a visceral, emotional response, and my defense mechanisms kicked in, because poor Rob, rightly or wrongly, he represented the people that had hurt me and had alienated me from church for quite some years. Now, spoiler alert, don't ever judge a book by its cover. With Rob's genuine persistence and genuine love for me and for my journey, we've been able to kind of break down those barriers together. And I'm quite humbled by that. I'm humbled by the wisdom that I've actually been able to learn from him. So, although he's not here, I want to thank Rob personally. The second person I want to mention is the lovely Moira. Now, Moira most certainly does not look like me or talk like me. See what I did there? But isn't Moira one of the most beautiful humans that you'll ever meet? Throw in some special culinary skills. Moira really genuinely, over the last few months, I think her and I have got to know each other a little bit better. And again, I'm very humbled by that connection with someone who's very different to me and someone who I have a lot to learn from. And by the way, Moira, I've forgiven you for calling me Rosie for the last 5 years. The last person I want to specifically shout out to, he's not here today, but hands up if you know who Kai is. So you've either talked to him or you've certainly heard him. Kai, oh my goodness. When I first met Kai, I genuinely thought a Category 4 hurricane had hit the Cottesloe Beach Hotel. Do you remember this? Like louder than life, Christian tattoos everywhere. I just genuinely didn't know what to make of him. But it turns out that he's one of the most gentle, beautiful souls I think I've ever met. And I realized that he'll do anything for you. And actually, no job is too big for him. So, on you, Kai. Whilst I'm very privileged to have made these individual connections, I think it would be remiss not to mention that sometimes you feel a bit sad and you feel lonely, and actually that's the time when it's really easy to disconnect from God, from people. But I think what I find hope in is that if you're willing to go and find it, it'll be there. At the end of the day, the invitation to the table doesn't expire. You're always welcome. So maybe today, try, if you're in that mindset, to make a new connection. Maybe try and invite someone metaphorically to your table. Maybe try to find someone who doesn't necessarily look like you or sound like you, and you might find that that connection is more rewarding than you think. Thanks for listening.
Hey up everyone, how are you? Good. It's been good morning so far. Wow. I always love coming back to Westcity and being a part. For those who don't know, I'm part of the team here at Westcity, and you've had the beautiful opportunity over the last 12 weeks of hearing some incredible speakers who are amongst us, who talk about different books of the Bible. We've covered the whole Bible, so we know it all now. It's great. You don't have to come to church for the remainder of the year. Take it off. And, I work away up on the sites. And look, to be honest, my topic today is on the book of Revelation. Revelation singular, not Revelations, which I always used to say Revelations, but Revelation. And working upon the minds with these guys and girls, to be honest, as I was preparing for this morning, I was thinking to myself, it's two different worlds I feel like I live in now. And it's like, who cares about Revelation, right? Like, I'm dealing with real issues, and honestly, I was finding it hard to motivate myself to talk about this. Here's a book I don't understand. It's weird. There's, it might be good for a few tattoos, but other than that, those creatures, I reckon they're pretty cool. But other than that, oh my gosh, I've got to talk to these folk here for 2 hours about the book of Revelation. So if someone can help me with this, I thought, actually, can you all just see that? I might just leave that. Can we bring it up here, Trev? Thanks. So I've just got this here. I thought maybe it'll keep us. I had the privilege of... So we have a person here, Peter Llewellyn, at our church. I kind of consider him my pastor. He wrote a book on Revelation. And this is the manuscript before he actually got the book printed. And I still have it because it's kind of like holy scriptures to me. It's like, this is a holy papyrus. And he said, can you have a look at that and just read through and tell me what you think? And I had the privilege of speaking at his book launch, and this is what he ended up calling it, Lamb Power. And the reason I'm sharing this book with you is because if you want to read Revelation, have a good resource book to go with it, okay? Today I'm just going to look at some brief overviews. I've got 15, 20 minutes to speak. I'm just going to look at some brief overviews. I'd encourage you, though, to read Revelation. Another resource is Bible Project. I think Dawn showed something the other week from the Bible Project. They have 2 15-minute kind of synopsis of what Revelation is and how you could read it. You can find them on YouTube. Go and look it up. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We're going to sell this afterwards. If you would like this is Peter's book. I love it because he wrote in my book and it said, to my friend, pastor, and sometimes good preacher. That's Peter for you. So I think they're selling for between $20 and $25, whatever you can afford around that range. You can pay FPOS at the back. I don't get anything from this. I just want to say this is a great resource. Peter is a theologian and he knows his stuff. And I would consider him an authority on the book of Revelation. But if you can't afford it and you would like this book, would anyone like it? Give me a wave and I'll give this one to you if you would like it. Yeah. Yeah, it is a bit like Hillsong, isn't it? Throwing stuff out, yeah. If I had a cannon and I could have fired it, that would have... Nah, only joking. Okay, so Revelation was written by, some people may think it was John the Beloved, the disciple of Jesus, but others say they think it might have been another John, a pastor who wrote it about 80 CE. So he was a prisoner on the Isle of Patmos, and he was a pastor of 7 churches that he wrote the book of Revelation to. But I don't know about you, working upon the minds and doing stuff like that. Have you ever watched the news and kind of been filled with these things? Fear, doubt, existential terror, confusion, despair, hopelessness, wondering what the hell is going on with the world and where's God in all of this? These are things I deal with on a daily basis with people where I work. And you know what? It's no different from us. We think, God, where are you? What's happening in all of this? The fact is, for some of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, we had a group of people who read Revelation and basically ratcheted up these feelings to 10, okay? Because they spoke about Revelation in regards to current times and what was imminently about to happen. Now, I'm 7, 8 years old, and I don't know if any of you saw this movie written by Nicolas Cage. Yeah, that's a more modern day version of it. So I'm going to just have to make sure my phone doesn't turn off. I'll keep holding. Has anyone seen this? Or read the book, Tim LaHaye, Left Behind? Oh my gosh, let me tell you. I was subjected to this in church. This is it was almost like, you're feeling these things? Let's put them on steroids for you, all right? And so as an 8-year-old, it was all about basically the rapture and, God takes the Christians and you're left behind because of some secret sin or something. I'm 8. All right, I don't know how many sins I could have had, but apparently. So I remember coming home one day, my mum had nipped next door. She was cooking a meal, and she went next door to get something, and I walked into the kitchen, and the stoves were on, and I shout in the house. I'm not too stressed at the moment, but I shout, Mom, the house is empty. I go looking around. I am not kidding you. I had been left behind. She came back in with a cup of sugar, and I'm in the fetal position crying, getting ready to, not take the mark of the beast. Otherwise, people in a white van were going to come and pick me up. And I had to not take the mark of the beast, and then my head would be chopped off, and then I would get into heaven. Literally, I'm in tears. Can I tell you, that is a really, really rubbish reading of the book of Revelation. And give me a second. My phone keeps turning off. I forgot to put it on. Do not, turn off after 2 minutes or whatever it is. 1 minute, never. There you go. Battery will only last for an hour now, but who cares? So, the fact is, what does revelation mean? The word. The word revelation simply means an unveiling or a revealing, and or uncovering. And the idea is like pulling back a curtain on something that was already there that we couldn't quite see, but now we can. And the fact is that Revelation and what is written in that involves seeing what was always there, and what's revealed is meant to change how we see everything else. The problem is the word apocalyptic for us has a really kind of like negative connotation. Caroline and I were talking about this. It has a connotation, doesn't it, of the end of the world, doom, war, famine, pestilence. We say about apocalyptic stuff like, whoa. But the Greek word apocalypsis simply means to unveil and to reveal. And so I have this here because I'm going to slowly unveil and reveal as the book of Revelation does it. John, who wrote Revelation, draws a lot of his imagery from themes from other apocalyptic books in the Bible. If you've read Daniel, who's read Ezekiel? I mean, wheels in wheels and weird things flying and all that. Daniel, Zechariah and Isaiah, as well as Genesis and Exodus. They're all in there in this rich imagery. And the fact is, at the start of Revelation, John says he's writing to 7 churches. There's a lot of sevens in here. 7 churches, a dragon with 7 heads, a beast with 7 crowns. I mean, there's just 7 all over the place. But he's writing to these Jewish people who are going through incredible persecution. They're under Rome's thumb. And he's writing pastorally to them, to care for them. And he has this vision, he says. And in this vision, there's a whole bunch of things that are revealed. And so he draws from all this stuff. And the readers of this vision that John penned as a pastor to these 7 churches, some of who he told off a bit. I think only one of them got the 100% tick of approval. But as he wrote to them, they would know where this stuff was coming from. The problem is when we read it, we aren't sort of aware of some of this imagery that he includes in it. So, how should we read? I'm going to fly through this. How should we read the book of Revelation? How many have ever read it? Give me a wave. All the way through. That's actually not bad. Caroline and I were saying we were so traumatized. She said to me, I was so traumatized by those movies that I've never read it through. I was too scared. And I was like, oh, that's so sad. But hopefully after this incredible message, you'll be reading it all the way through. So how should you read it? Look, firstly, in light of its historical context, it was being written to the readers of the 7 churches, but also it is to us as well, because it's being included in the canon of the Bible. The Bible is a part of our scriptures. Read it as apocalyptic literature and pastoral guidance, believe it or not, with the awareness of its symbolic nature. Read it as an encouragement for faithful witness. And finally, read it as a full story with different scenes. We know this about Scripture. It's very easy to pick something out, isn't it, and make something of that. And it can happen in the same way with the book of Revelation. It's like, if you talk to someone and you're chatting with them, and then after chatting for a while, they pick up on one thing you said. Have you ever had that happen to you? And you're like, I said a blooming heap of stuff in context with all this stuff, and you literally stopped listening at that point and focused on that one word or one statement. It triggered something in you, or you brought something to that, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, and you pull it out, and have a guess what happens? It becomes a mess, right? Same with the book of Revelation. Read it as a whole story with different scenes, different players coming on the scene and going off the scene. But read the whole thing. Read it through from start to finish. I read it this morning, 22 chapters. Piece of cake, easy. Easy. While I was on the toilet, I read it. That reminds me, I didn't wipe down my phone after. But anyway, all good. Read it through. Can we cut that out of the podcast? All right. How shouldn't you read it? Okay? How shouldn't you read it? Well, you shouldn't read it as a literal cipher on how to crack current geopolitical events and the people involved. Please, whatever you do, don't read it like that. You know, one of the books I loved to read as a young boy when I was in maybe 7 or 8, 9 was The Lord of the Rings. How many love that book? Yeah, awesome. And the Narnia books as well, both for me. Funny how C.S. Lewis and Tolkien were friends and mates. But I frothed over those books, the whole 8 books in the Narnia series and the Tolkien books. But you know, Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings during the Second World War. He was in the First World War. He was actually in the Battle of the Somme. He wrote it during the Second World War, and it was published in 1950. And when he wrote Lord of the Rings, many people who read it said, this is definitely code for the Second World War. This is an analogy of the Second World War. It's obvious. You can read it in there, you know, this evil force lurking through the land, you know, Sauron, obviously that's got to be Hitler or someone like that, you know, and they said it. And it's funny because this was a notion Tolkien strongly refuted was his intent. Tolkien said it wasn't an allegory of the Second World War. Instead, he liked to see it as dealing with the universal themes rather than specific references. Themes like the nature of good and evil, the corrupting influence of power, strength found in unlikely places, hairy-feeted hobbits. The importance of hope in dark times and the role of mercy and compassion. Revelation is a similar approach. As we read it, the imagery and the symbolism, we start to see rhythms and find ourselves enlisted in a multi-dimensional act of Christian worship. Because one of the main themes of the book of Revelation is worship. You come back to it over and over again. Worthy is the Lamb, seated on the throne. So there's good stuff in there, stuff that actually and probably would speak well to even the hardened miners. And I'm just talking about the women up north. Why should you read it? Well, there's some reasons why we should read it. Oh, by the way, here's a nice picture of Revelation. No. Why should you read it? Uncovering, unveiling. Well, let's go through some big themes that are covered in the book of Revelation. Well, firstly, I'm going to have to look at this. For following the way of Jesus as a faithful witness. Remember, this is written to people under the thumb of Rome. Nero is just persecuting the crap out of them. And they're like, how do we survive this? And John writes, he says, you know, in the book of Revelation, in this vision I saw, these scenes, there's something in here about the slain lamb. The slain lamb. And the sort of the way Jesus becomes enthroned in the book of Revelation is so beautiful. But he says it deals with themes about being a faithful witness, encouragement in persecution, and the priority of worship and resistance to cultural idolatry. All these things, you might say, you know, when we read Revelation and we read it written to the people of the day, we may not face the same sources of or coercions to worship, but we have our very own cultural idols that scream out to us, don't we? That say, worship me. Worship me. And John is reminding them that the only one who should be receiving our worship is the slain lamb. He's beautiful, and I'll talk more about him in a minute. Some of the big themes we find in Revelation and why we should read it is for understanding history. Not history in a specific way to say, oh yes, the number of the beast. You know what 665 is? Neighbor of the beast. No, 666, the number of the beast. You know, we all know it was Henry Kissinger back in the 1970s and 80s war. He was definitely the Antichrist, the number of the beast. It's to understand some of this big stuff around God's sovereignty over events. Where is God? Where is God when we are in the middle of stuff that is going on and we feel pressed down and we feel like this whole world is, going to hell in a handbasket? What is going on? Revelation speaks to us of God is at work, redeeming and rescuing through Jesus Christ. It talks to us around patterns of empire and resistance. And we can find hope in God's purposes. If you read the book of Revelation, you'll see this reference to empires throughout it. And this is not something new to the scriptures. And the way that John encourages the believers to resist empire is through worship. Through worship. Not through violence, not through taking up sword. This is how you overthrow Rome. Pick up your swords and, become zealots. He says, worship the slain lamb. The way of Jesus is to be your way. He gave his life. He didn't take lives. There's some amazing things in that. And in a lot of the pictures and the analogy and the sort of symbolism of Revelation, there's a kind of a reference to the empires that have been. There's a reference, to Persia and Babylon and Greece. Babylon is, the Jewish people were no strangers to Babylon. They knew what it was like. By the rivers of Babylon. They were in Babylon. How do you live as God's community when you've been stolen from your homes, you've lost all your identity? Worship is part of that. Greece, Rome, and how many know we have other empires who have come and will go since then? And so it's about how do you live as God's community under kingdomism, not whatever other ism is around at the time, to follow and be faithful witnesses to our Lord. These are all great themes and also questions we should be wrestling with and asking. Fortunately, we live in a society that doesn't punish us for gathering and following the way of Jesus. They may not like us, most people, but at the same time, we really can't have like a persecution complex. We've got it pretty good. We're not persecuted. But the truth is, you never know. You never know, do you? You never know. If you go to China, it's pretty much a different thing for the Christians there. And I remember seeing a video once. I wish I could find it again. Maybe have a look on YouTube. It's of a bunch of Chinese nationals receiving Bibles. And I have about 40,000 Bibles on my shelf at home. And these were being pulled out of a suitcase, and these beautiful Chinese men and women were literally holding the scriptures, crying, weeping, that they had an opportunity to have their own Bible. And it just broke my heart when I think I've just got so many that it's so easy to access. But that we have our own challenges here on how do we live as Christ's community in the culture and the place we live. So it covers themes like that. And the next one, and I'm nearly through some of these big themes, but for worship, we should read Revelation for worship. The nature of true worship, resistance through worship. And there's something in there about the cosmic significance of worship. Now, we know worship's not just singing a song on a Sunday. It's about living our lives aligned to the way of Jesus. But there's something cosmic about that. Have you ever thought that? You get to partake in something that's bigger than you. You're not just here as another number, but there's something bigger that you get to be part of as a follower of Jesus. And I don't know really what that is, and I don't even pretend to know. I just like the idea of it. I like the idea that God says, little old Phil, well, not so little, but old, something about you living your life in love towards God and others has a place in the cosmic scene of things, the cosmic stage of what's going on. There's something that gets said to powers that you don't understand or even know, maybe slightly get unveiled as you begin to walk further in following Jesus. But I like that. But the most important thing that John talks about throughout, there's these seals and this scroll with 7 seals on it, and no one can open it. And he weeps. No one can open it. And then there's this picture of a slain lamb. I could imagine it's quite gory. I know what a slain lamb looks like. I won't tell you how, but I know. The picture is kind of, when I picture, I think, oh, this slain lamb we know is Jesus. And the Jewish people would have been used to the idea of sacrifice and atonement, but they weren't used to the idea of Jesus coming as a slain lamb, someone who would die to break the power of sin and death over people he loved and he'd been working for a long time to rescue. Firstly through the patriarchs, and then the nation of Israel and the Jewish people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and so on. And then finally, through that lineage, Jesus arriving, the slain lamb. This doesn't just tell us that Jesus came to die, to break those powers, to break the powers of the things over us, but that's the way they were to live. That's self-giving love. Self-denying love. And you know, when I think about Jesus, the one who was worthy to open the scrolls, when I do think about him, and sometimes I think about him suffering. I think about the King of Heaven lowering himself so much, and I think about that trial and that day. It says in the scriptures that Jesus, he set his face like flint on the way to Jerusalem. I can see almost like the eyes of Father God and through Jesus looking, saying, I'm going to Jerusalem. I know I'm going to be humiliated and I'm going to be killed at the hands of people who I love. And I'm going to do it willingly. I'm going to die for them. And this is the picture in Revelation of a slain lamb who everyone worships. And I just see Jesus on that night being betrayed by Peter and others. And I think, I probably would have done the same. I would have done the same. And I see him being beaten. And I see God. I see him just going through what he went through, but face like flint for us. No wonder in the book of Revelation you hear and read about this. John sees this big crowd of people from every tongue and every tribe and every nation singing, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the Lamb. I can't wait to join him one day. Heaven's a bit like our home churches, multi-generational, from everywhere, hopefully one day, singing, worthy is the Lamb. You can't miss if you read Revelation, the centrality of Jesus. Good old Eugene Peterson says this: our times are not propitious for worship. You can tell someone else wrote this other than me, okay? The times never are. The world is hostile to worship. The devil hates worship. As Revelation makes clear, worship must be carried out under conditions decidedly uncongenial to it. Some Christians even get killed because they worship. That was his intro to Revelation. And uncover. The final is for hope. Present meaning in sufferings, God's faithfulness demonstrated, and ultimate victory and restoration of all things assured. You know, it's funny, Genesis begins with a garden, and Revelation ends with a garden. On the banks of the river, there's a tree, and its leaves provide healing for the nations. In Genesis, there's a tree of knowledge and good and evil, and a tree of life. In Genesis, there's Adam and Eve. In Revelation, there's a whole community of people following the way of Jesus, following the slain lamb, declaring who he is. In Genesis is the introduction of death and, Cain killing Abel, and let's build a tower, and slavery and war and violence. In Revelation, there'll be no more tears. The Lamb will rule, and we get to be his people, living under him and under that for the blessing of the nations. I thought I'd finish by giving you the final little excerpt from the final chapter of Revelation. It says this, for those listening on the podcast, Revelation 22. Then the angel showed me water of life, river, crystal bright. It flowed from the throne of God and the Lamb right down the middle of the street. The tree of life was planted on each side of the river, producing 12 kinds of fruit, a ripe fruit each month. The leaves of the tree are for healing of the nations, and never again will anything be cursed. The throne of God and the Lamb is at the throne of God and of the Lamb is at the center. His servants will offer God service, worshipping. They'll look on his face, their foreheads mirroring God. Never again will there be any night. No one will need lamplight or sunlight. The shining of God, the Master, is all the light anyone needs, and they will rule with him age after age. This is John's revelation. This is John's unveiling as he sees this vision given him by Jesus. And like everyone here today, there's something about that prophetic imagination that draws us in, that helps us not just live in that area of fear, doubt, hopelessness, existential terror. There's something in that says, you know what? It's not now, but will be. It's now, but not yet. And that's okay. You can live in that middle space. And while we're in the middle of it, I love that we get to fall on our knees in worship and then get up each Sunday and roll up our sleeves in discipleship. We'd say this at Westcity a lot. We believe that we're to be an alternative community to the world. That doesn't mean that we're sort of like, Amish or something. We have to drive around in courts, horse and carts or whatever, and all the men grow beards. I can't grow a beard, so I'd be out. It's not an alternative community. It's a community built on loving even our enemies, community built on the way of Jesus. But we also then say we'll be a caring community for the world. Some of the big picture of discipleship for us is to show the world you don't have to live the tired old ways of violence and dominance and greed and hate. There's actually a better way. It's a way of the slain lamb. It's the way of Jesus. That can keep us busy. And it's beautiful work. And so I'm going to ask those who are coming to hand out communion to come and do that this morning. And I'm going to do what Irene said, and that's invite you to connect. Connect with the slain lamb, Jesus, the one who gave his life for us this morning, but connect with one another. How many love Irene's voice? I want to just record her and then I can play her on my AirPods at night and I'll just fall asleep. It's weird? Yeah, okay, fair enough. I hope today that you are able to hear the welcome of Jesus. The welcome, the call to come and connect, regardless if you say, I'm not a church guy. You may have said, if I come to church today, I better watch out, lightning might strike me. You know, I've heard that said before. You might just say, I'm barely here. Please hear today the invite of Jesus to say, I love you. I saw you when I gave my life. I gave my life for you and I want you to come. And so each week we say poetry. We're a bit like John. We say a bit of poetry because God deserves poetry. Sometimes words fail us. And there's something so beautiful about the invite. It has to have beautiful words attached to it. So can we stand up? And I'm going to invite you to come. Here's what we say. Please hear the invite of Jesus. The one who's worthy.
Thank you so much for joining us. Each week at Westcity, we say a benediction together. We do this because we believe that the purpose of the church is to be a caring community for the world, and that as we go and serve others, we enter into Christ's work of welcome, restoration and healing, both for us and others. We believe that in doing so, we get to see and encounter Christ. So let's say the benediction together. We come together as the church to be reminded of the go of Christ. So we will go out and feed the hungry, go out and clothe the naked, go out and fight for justice, go out and end oppression, go out and proclaim anew the old story, go out and associate with those who don't look like us, think like us, act like us, and don't even like us. And we'll do it all in the name of the one who sent us. His name is Jesus.